I am a huge fan of animation, and that includes animated kids shows, which are just really not made for me, are they? But what separates a great animated series from a masterpiece is whether or not I think it gave the children watching it nightmares.
Oh wow, that's a great offer! How about instead I shuffle the functions of every hole in your face?
Gravity Falls is a great example of this, but something else is challenging the title for my favourite animated kids show. Loads of animated shows have come up with interesting framing devices for their stories and morals. Steven Universe has alien stone people progressively being terrible human parents, but no other show quite hits that nightmare fuel spot like Infinity Train. The first two series, books, whatever, of the show focus on the titular train, a Sisyphean transport with infinite amount of carts, based on the first things the writer saw when the edibles kicked in. The train is surrounded by a barren wasteland, with what are essentially Dementors but even more nightmarish somehow. And I thought public transport was bad enough. The train is a wonderful framing device, and one hell of an antagonist. The viewer is always on the edge of their seat, since even if some of the carts don't seem overtly dangerous at first, you never know what it's hiding, really giving some character to the train itself. The driving force for the protagonist and the viewer alike is this sinister nature of the unknown. Since the amount of cars is literally infinite, all progress through the story has to be done solely through character development. What? Character development in my kids show? Yes, and the writers handle it really, really well. You feel just as hopeless and lost and triumphant and happy as the protagonists do. The whole purpose of every season is to actually complete a character arc, and even with the horrifically quirky settings and characters, it never manages to derail itself. Another thing to touch on is the sound design. It really heaps onto this almost sci-fi horror atmosphere. I mean, listen to that title card, it's awesome! No wacky songs or group a cappella for this show, which don't get me wrong, I love In the Right Place, but this is just such a breath of fresh Blade Runner air. Additionally, they just pair this with just the best designed logo, perfectly incorporating the infinity symbol with the train itself. Mwah, perfection, especially if you compare it to the pilot logo. The first series stars Tulip, a computer taken by the train as she runs away from home and discovers a glowing number on her hand. Boom! Sympathetic character established, looming peril of being stuck on the train established, mystery of the number on her hand established, all addressed in the first episode. The side characters of 1-1 and Atticus are also a fun mix of pitch black humor and gusto that keeps you watching.
Awfully morbid little thing, aren't you?
Yes.
The character design is top notch, with 1-1's sleek design juxtaposing the grittier and more grounded design of the train. Kinda like putting the Star Wars prequel designs in the junk pit of episode 4 where they belong.
There's something alive in here.
That's your imagination.
Something just moved past my leg.
It was me, Batcha. While the first season is great, with several emotional gut punches and an ending that mostly pays off the mystery setup, while still keeping the train an ambiguous villain, for me it's the second season where the show really shines. The writers on this show clearly know what they're doing. They said to themselves, hey, the first season went pretty well, why don't we just expand on the same stuff as before? Nah, let's take a fairly nuanced side character from one of the first episodes and turn them into this awesome protagonist completely different from the first. MT is such a wonderful departure from a lot of animated protagonists. She's proactive, cynical, and completely capable while not being a Mary Sue or unlikable in any way. The new helpless passenger character, while not being all that deep, is still interesting and a fun counterpart to MT. The cherry on top? They add tones of noir thriller, detective shows, and body horror into this Cartoon Network show. I cannot believe the stuff they get away with in this second season, and it looks as though season 3 is continuing this trend, with the main characters essentially being some of the antagonists from last season with more depth and nuance, which I am 100% on board for. The animation is stellar as ever, and just like the other things I've mentioned, it manages to set itself apart from the usual animated crowd. Infinity Train backgrounds use a similar style to Over the Garden Wall, where detailed watercolour backgrounds are created for the 2D characters to exist in. While Over the Garden Wall strives for a beautiful storybook aesthetic, Infinity Train seems closer in tone to something like Total Recall or Logan's Run, with its hints at 80s sci-fi and horror elements like the conductor's car. There may even be a reference or a play on The Ring in this show, which is very ballsy and very appreciated. The CGI effects of the carts moving around each other are also really captivating, giving more and more life to the train itself. Overall, a really solid show drawing from a host of interesting themes rarely seen in a kid show. I would gladly shatter my children's innocence with this show any day.